Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And it's time for another this and that video. And if you see me wearing the same clothes for several videos in a row, it's because I'm shooting them all back to back on the same day. Anyway, let's get to talking about what I got going on here today. First, I want to start by showing a couple of the really neat gifts that we got from people. This one here was from Candy Hill over at My Mobile Homestead. And it's the American Pocket Medical Dictionary. And this one's dated 1930. Very, very cool. Candy, thank you so much for this. I am just loving this thing. It is just really neat. So it is actually a dictionary, so you can, let me show you how it's laid out here. Okay, very cool. And I just love stuff like this, so I appreciate this so much. And also for those wood lathe tools that you sent, those old ones, that was very cool. Mr. Rain thought that was pretty neat. So, and then T sent me this folder, and it's basically what it is, it's a recipe book, you know, for recipe cards. So you make up your own cards and you can put them in here and everything's categorized. And she knows me, knows how much I love green. And it's just, I just think it's cool. Plus it has this pad of note paper matching. And then I love the picture, and of course parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Of course, that makes me want to sing, but there you go. Anyway, T, thank you for this. It's beautiful. I love it. All right, now let's get on to talking about some of the other stuff I have going on here today. So, if you saw my last video on infused water or vitamin water, whatever it was I called it, I'll go ahead and link to it up here if you haven't seen it. And I have been trying all different kinds of things. I still keep going back to the borage mint. It's my favorite one. And yes, you can use any type of mint. It doesn't have to be the mojito mint or the peppermint, which are my two favorites. You can use any mint you want. You can use any herb you want. It's all entirely up to you. It's very, you know, that's what makes it so great. You can do whatever you want. And if you saw my peach video, I did one with the peach pits and peels, and it turned out really great. But I still keep going back to the borage mint. It's my favorite. However, my current one I have going right now is rose petal and pansy. And I had this one out in the greenhouse. I'm going to put it back out there because I want it to steep for a little bit longer before I stick it in the fridge. But I wanted to bring it in to show you. I've really been enjoying rose petal tea, so I figured a cold version of it would be really good. And rose petals are very good for you. I hope to eventually do a video on rose petals and the benefits of those. A lot of people know about rose hips, very high in vitamin C, but so are the rose petals. And I use them for quite a bit of things. So I'll try to do I'll try to do a separate video on that down the road. But anyway, I add rose petals to jams and syrups, and back when I used to make the honey wine, the mead, I would make one of the ones I made that would turn out really good was a rose petal plum wine, and that was pretty good. So there's lots of things you can do with your rose petals. And then of course I use it in my infused oil for my skin cream. So that's the other thing here is I've got this is calendula. It's the same thing I use in my infused oil all the time for the skin cream. That's just kind of the basic skin cream to use however you want. You know, just on dry spots. You can use it as a lip balm. I use it on my face. I use it for everything, even as a makeup remover. And then, anyway, this is calendula, rose petal, marshmallow leaves, and flowers if I have some in there, and pansies. And so the rose petals are really, really good for your skin, as is the calendula and the pansies and the marshmallows, so that's why I do that. And I have this out because this one goes clear back to April of this year, and it is time for me to strain it out. And I think I have another batch going, and I've been putting that one in the greenhouse to let it infuse since it's nice and warm out there. Now again, when I do the infused oils, I always use a stable oil. Avocado is one of the most stable oils that is also flavorless and scentless, and so that's my favorite one to use for such things. I do not recommend using an olive oil to infuse with. Some people do it, even Rosemary Gladstar will do that, but you have to be very careful because it can go rancid on you if it gets too hot. I did one time, was doing some infused oil with olive oil in the greenhouse, but it got too warm and it ended up going rancid on me and I had to toss it. So you really got to pay attention to your heat when it comes to that. So anyway, I'll be straining that out probably today and getting it ready for making some more skin cream. And now over here I have a whole bunch of different more newly dehydrated stuff going on. I did just shoot a video about how I dehydrate the green beans and the snow peas and the carrots, and this was brought on because somebody in my last this and that video had asked if I blanched my green beans, and no, I don't. I do not blanch them. I just cut them up and dehydrate them. You can go ahead and check out that video right up here. It's very simple and it works great. No need for blanching. And then same thing applies to the rhubarb and the snow peas. I do not blanch. I don't blanch anything, ever. Doesn't matter if I'm freezing it or dehydrating it, I do not blanch. I used to. When I'd first try things, I'd do it by whatever I could find online, trying to find the best method, and every single time I have not been happy with how it turned out. And it was not worth the work. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about was, so here's the dehydrated carrots I showed in that video. And then here are the tops from those same carrots. And yes, I dehydrate up the carrot tops as well. And oh, and here's a picture of the carrots, these particular ones, right after I picked them. And that's actually not all of them, because some of them I ate right away and cooked with right away. But I posted in my community page a picture of that same picture and talked about how I was going to dehydrate the carrot tops as well. And of course came the question, and sometimes I take things for granted that I have a lot, new people coming in that may not know, what do I do with all these things? Well, when it comes to stuff like the carrot tops, the stinging nettle, kale, beet greens, all that kind of stuff, they all go in the same mix together. When I first dehydrate them up, I put them in separate jars. That's only so I can keep track of it, just how much I have. And then at the end of the season, when I'm all done dehydrating stuff up, I put them all in a huge bowl, and then I put them, and then I jar them up into quart-sized jars. I have a video on this I did last year. It's going to be different than this year, but I'll go ahead and link to it right up here. And then I'll probably do an update video this year so you can see the difference between what last year's mixed greens blend looks like and what this year's mixed greens blend looks like. But anyway, those just go into just about everything I make for dinners and lunches and stuff, and even sometimes breakfast, all throughout the year. I will add a pinch of the mixed greens blend to my homemade breakfast sausage, and I'll go ahead and link to that video right up here. I have two of them. One is if you use wild meat, and the other is if you use like a beef that has more fat in it. Because if you use wild meat like elk or venison, you want to add some fat to it. That's the only real difference. So I do have two. I'll link to one of them up there, and you can find the other one. Anyway, so that's what's going to happen with the carrot tops. They're really high in chlorophyll. You can get that, just lots of good stuff in there. All your different greens, they're going to have some similarities of what they're high in, but they're going to have other things that they're high in that are different from each other. So getting them all together in a blend, and then being able to throw it into your soups and your stews and your casseroles and your sauces. I put it in my Italian sauces. I put it in my fettuccine sauce, and any of that kind of stuff. It's just a good way to get those in there all throughout the year. And also for those people who don't like greens, like people who don't like kale or red mustard or anything like that, it's just another way to get it in there, because when these things are dehydrated up, the flavor is reduced to, it is very, very mild and hardly detectable when you put it into foods. It takes actually quite a bit. You'd have to put a lot in for you to even notice the flavor of the greens into your soups and stuff. And usually I put a handful, a good sized pinch, or a handful depending on how much I'm making. And you got to consider it's all dehydrated. So, a handful that's, maybe like this big, which is, a few tablespoons right there, is probably equivalent to this much fresh vegetables. So that's just a guess. It's no science on that. But anyway, just an idea. Some other things I'm dehydrating up, like I always do every year, are my tomatoes. I'll dehydrate some this way in chunks and pieces like this. And I have a video on this I did, I think maybe 2 years ago. I'll go ahead and link to that right up here. And then I also have one I did on where I process them up and put them on the dehydrator trays, almost like I'm making a fruit leather, and then take that and just flake it up, and then I use the flakes to thicken up my Italian sauces and stuff like that. And I really like them. I like using both. Then obviously zucchini. This is my favorite shape for dehydrating my zucchini, and I'll have a separate video coming out on that, and I'll be shooting that one next. And then let's see, what else do I have here? Nasturtium leaves. I'm hoping to get this jar all the way full. I'm not getting as many leaves this year as I usually do. I just don't have as many nasturtium plants this year as I usually do, which was kind of weird. And then, and I guess that's it for the dehydrated stuff. Now I wanted to talk about the soaked grains, and I mentioned, I think it was the last video, this and that, I think, or the one before that, I was talking about how I had fermented the accidentally fermented the wheat berries. I'd let them sit for too long because I kept forgetting about them, and so they sat for 3 days. Well, these I intentionally left for 3 days because, yes, when I ground up those wheat berries and then used them in bread, it did give the bread just a little bit of that sourdough taste. And I smelled these. They smell nicely fermented, not rotten, but that just good, fizzy, wonderful fermented smell that you come to recognize when you're used to fermenting stuff. So I'm going to be rinsing these out today and then putting them on my dehydrator. Now, summertime or anytime when we're getting lots of solar power, as with anything I'm dehydrating in this time of year with solar power, that I use the electric dehydrators for all this stuff. For the grains, I put them on the fruit roll-up trays because obviously they're small. And they take about a day. They dehydrate up faster than you think they would. And then I put them back in a jar like this once they're all fully dry, and then that's what I grind up into my flour. In the wintertime, I will do this on the wood stove, and I do have a video of that. If I still have some space, I'll link to the one on how I do it on the wood stove right up here, so that I'm never having to use public power to dehydrate my stuff. Now, some people may come in and new may think, well, are you off-grid or not? No, we're not completely off-grid. We are still connected to public power and public water. But we also have a pretty extensive solar power setup, and we do have a video on that. And again, if I have room up here, I'll link to the video that Patrick did a year or so ago on that, or I'll put it in the end card, so that you can kind of see what we have set up, and we have since added to our battery bank. But anyway, we utilize the solar power as much as we can all through the year. But because we're in rain country and we get in the winter and fall, it's not even just that we get less sun because of the time of the year. We get less sun because that's the time of the year we get mostly clouds. And though we can still collect solar power through the clouds, it's just obviously not as great as it's going to be as it is on a sunny day. So we conserve our solar power for running things like our string lights, and I have a video I did just on the main source of lighting we use in our home is string lights, the LED ones, because we can run them off solar power all year round and not use any public power for that. So we're partially off grid, and then you'll see behind me a lot of times this time of year you'll see a hot plate sitting on top of my conventional stove. The conventional stove and oven really don't get used for much more than a countertop, really. This time of year we use the hot plates off of our solar power for cooking on, or we use our rocket stove, and then in the winter or the solar oven, and then in the winter we use the wood stove for doing pretty much everything when it comes to cooking and baking. There'll be a little bit of baking I'll do I have a toaster oven I use for baking breads and stuff all year round, and in the summertime I can hook that up to solar power. I don't typically do that in the winter because anything with an element draws a lot of power, and so we try to conserve that for the other things. And for emergencies, so if we have a power outage, we definitely want to make sure we have our solar power set up to be able to run our freezers and our refrigerator. Those are the most important things, and so we keep those on the solar power year round. Okay, and then one more thing, actually this isn't one more thing, but another thing is I got some of the beans that I grew last year soaking, because it's not going to be long before I'll be picking these same kind of beans. These are the runner beans. Now I pick the young ones as green beans, and then I'll leave the rest to get huge. They get huge. They get this long by this wide, and then these are the ones I use for the dry beans that I use for making chili and stuff like that. So that's what's going on here. I'm soaking some of my beans with a little bit with rainwater with a little bit of vinegar added to it to help break it down, and then I'll be making some chili out of those tomorrow. And so yeah, I'm trying to get some of these used up because I'm going to have more coming in, and I still have a bunch more of these left, so I need to use them up. So it's really working out pretty good. We're growing enough beans to last, both in the form of green beans and a dry bean, to last us through the year. So that's pretty cool. And then right here are my zucchini. That it's just the zucchini out front is going berserk. And honestly, I don't typically like to let them get this big, but 2 days in a row I go out and find these massive ones that I keep missing, or they're just going from this size to that size overnight. I don't know. I can only assume they just, because the leaves and everything are so big out there, I've been having a hard time even just seeing them, and so I have to keep going around the plant at different angles, and oh, there's one I missed. I don't know how I did it, but yeah, I don't. Somebody asked, do you like letting your zucchini get that big? Not really, not usually, but these feel pretty heavy. I did weigh them. They're like 3 pounds a piece, and I don't think they're going to be that punky. We'll see when I cut into them. This is usually the biggest I like them to get, and you know, this is a good size for the, and this is the Black Beauty zucchini, which typically do the best for us out here, the Black Beauties. Now I did grow this really great Italian one a couple of years ago, and it just didn't have the production of the Black Beauty, but it was a beautiful zucchini, had the nice stripes. It didn't taste good raw, but it was delicious. It was the best tasting zucchini when it came to stir frying it up or cooking it. I loved it. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll go ahead and put the name of it right here if you're interested. But again, it makes a really big plant with so little fruit in comparison to the Black Beauty, which typically is a more compact plant, but yields quite a bit of fruit. So anyway, this is just my favorite zucchini so far. And of course, you can see I've got a little bowl of nasturtium flowers. Those are going to go on my dehydrator today. And I still need to go out there and pick some more leaves because I gotta get that jar filled up. Now I'm pretty sure I've already used up all my I cards and maybe my N cards, but if I already have and I can't link to it up here, you can simply do a search on my page. Go to the main channel page. You'll see the little eyeglass, little spyglass. Just type next to it whatever it is you're looking for. Nasturtium, vinegar, whatever it is, pansies, calendula, and it will pull up any and all videos I have with that topic in there, and you can find that. So what I was saying is I did just do a video on nasturtiums and how to use them, some of the different ways that I use them. I have a couple videos out about nasturtiums, and I will be doing a video on the nasturtium leaves soon, and making a tincture out of them and what I use that for. Okay, well, that's it for the this and that today. That's quite a bit, actually. And I hope you enjoyed this video and that maybe you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.